Attention, brave souls. What you're about to witness might make your heart race. Before the suspense takes over your screen, click subscribe now and hit the like button. Get ready for a spine-chilling experience. But be warned, only the boldest will survive until the end.
My name is Ethan Cole. I'm 32 years old, a freelance investigative journalist, and I specialize in debunking urban legends, ghost stories, cryptids, haunted locations. You name it, I've exposed it. I've spent years proving that fear is just a product of the human mind, that there's always a logical explanation behind so-called supernatural events. But what happened to me in Yosemite National Park? I can't explain it, and I wish to God I could. This is not a ghost story. This is not a creepypasta. What I'm about to tell you is real. I lived it. And if you're thinking about going deep into Yosemite's wilderness, don't. It started as just another assignment. I had been researching strange disappearances in national parks, a topic that had gained traction online in recent years. Yosemite, in particular, had a disturbing number of unsolved cases. People vanishing without a trace, no bodies found, no signs of struggle, experienced hikers, even park rangers, simply gone. Theories ranged from wild animal attacks to undiscovered cave systems, even whispers of something more sinister lurking deep in the forests. I didn't buy into any of it. People get lost, accidents happen. National parks are vast, unpredictable landscapes. But then I found something that didn't make sense. A series of journal entries, written by a former ranger, buried in old case files. The notes were erratic, paranoid, filled with warnings. It sees you before you see it. The woods are wrong after dark. If you find the station, run. The last entry simply read, "It's too late for me. The ranger who wrote them. Never found. Officially presumed dead, though no body was ever recovered." That was enough to pique my interest. I decided to go there myself. I arrived in a small town near Yosemite the night before my hike, the kind of town that exists purely as a rest stop for tourists. One gas station, a couple of diners, and a handful of motels that haven't been renovated since the 70s. At the motel check-in, the old woman at the counter barely looked up from her newspaper when I mentioned my hiking route. But when I casually asked about the abandoned ranger station, her face changed. "That's not a place you want to go," she muttered, flipping a page as if the conversation was already over. "Was that?" I pressed. She sighed, lowering her reading glasses. "People go missing up there." I smirked. "People go missing all over Yosemite." She didn't smile back. "Not like this." Before I could ask anything else, the bell on the motel door jingled. A man in a park ranger uniform walked in. Sturdy build, mid-50s, a face carved from years in the sun. His name tag read Galloway. He eyed me. "You're the journalist, aren't you?" I nodded. He exhaled sharply, then motioned for me to step outside. I followed, expecting some official, stay on the designated trails warning. Instead, he leaned against his truck and spoke in a low, measured voice. "Listen, I don't care what kind of article you're writing, but you stay away from that station, understand?" "Why?" His jaw tightened. "Because people who go looking for whatever's out don't come back." I studied his expression. No exaggeration. No humor, just cold certainty. "You've seen something," I said. Galloway held my gaze. For a long time, he said nothing. Then, just barely above a whisper, "I've heard it." A chill crawled up my spine. "What did you hear?" His grip tightened on his truck's door handle. He hesitated, then shook his head and climbed inside. "Turn back while you can." With that, he drove off, leaving me standing alone in the dim glow of the motel's neon sign. That night, I sat in my room, researching every missing person case connected to Yosemite. The details disturbed me. 10 hikers vanishing mid-trail, footprints leading nowhere. Then seasoned rangers disappearing, their last radio transmissions nothing but static. 10 survivors, the very few who made it back, describing the same impossible thing. The trees moved. The forest changed. Something was watching me. I was still awake at 3 a.m. when I heard something strange outside my window, a whisper, faint, indistinct. I froze, my pulse hammering. The motel was practically empty. No other cars in the lot except mine and the clerk's. Slowly, I moved to the window, pulling back the curtain just a fraction. The parking lot was empty. Nothing. But as I turned away, I caught it, a shadow shifting at the tree ling. Not walking. Not moving naturally. Just twitching. I blinked. It was gone. A trick of the light, I told myself. Sleep deprivation. My mind playing tricks on me after spending hours reading horror stories. I didn't sleep that night. At dawn, I packed my gear, checked my map, and set out for the trail. I told myself this was just another investigation. That there was nothing waiting for me in the woods. That I wouldn't become another unsolved case. I was wrong. God help me, I was wrong. The air in Yosemite felt heavier the deeper I went. At first, it was nothing. Just the usual stillness of the wilderness, the absence of human sound. Peaceful. But as the sun slid lower in the sky, that stillness turned oppressive. The wind carried a strange hush, as if the trees themselves were listening. I kept walking, shaking off the unease creeping up my spine. I'd read about psychological responses to isolation, how the human mind starts playing tricks in deep wilderness. That had to be it. Then my compass started spinning. I stopped dead in my tracks, watching the red needle whirl wildly like a broken clock. North, south, west, nowhere. I tapped the glass, frowned, and pulled out my GPS. No signal. Not impossible, but strange. This area wasn't supposed to be a dead zone. I checked my map, adjusted my pack, and kept moving. The feeling of being watched grew stronger. At first, it was just that, an uneasy sense, the prickling on the back of my neck. Then the forest around me started to change. The birds had gone silent. No rustling in the underbrush, only my own footsteps crunching on the path. Until they weren't, I stopped. So did they? I turned sharply, scanning the trees. Nothing. Just endless trunks stretching skyward, casting long, skeletal shadows. But something was out there. I walked faster. The footsteps followed, shallow breaths, my pulse hammering in my ears. I forced myself to keep calm, rationalizing an echo. A trick of sound. Maybe an animal moving parallel to me. That's when I saw the footprints. They weren't mine. I crouched, inspecting the imprints in the dirt. Large, not human, not quite animal. Something about them was wrong, like they had too many toes, the indentations impossibly deep, as if whatever left them was heavier than it should be. A bitter taste settled in my mouth. My body knew what my brain refused to accept. I wasn't alone. The sun was sinking. I needed shelter. That's when I saw it, the abandoned ranger station, slumped against the trees like a corpse, weathered, its wooden walls covered in moss and decay, windows dark and empty like hollowed-out eyes. It shouldn't have been there. According to my map, there was no structure in this part of the forest. I hesitated, but the growing darkness left me little choice. I stepped forward. The wooden door groaned as I pushed it open. The smell hit me first. Damp wood, mold, and something else. Something rotten. Inside, the air was thick, heavy with dust and neglect. A single desk sat in the corner, papers scattered across it, yellowed with age. An old radio rested on the shelf, coated in grime. The walls, they had been scratched, not by an animal, words carved deep gouged into the wood. ITSESEOU. I exhaled sharply, backing away. My boot hit something, an open journal lying on the floor. I picked it up. The pages were filled with frantic, scrawled handwriting, some of it smudged as if written in a panic. Stay on the marked trails. It doesn't like light. If you hear it, it's already too late. I'll do an OT cell EP. The last entry was barely legible. The pen pressed so hard it tore the paper. It's in the trees. It's in the trees. ITCNT TRS. A loud CRCK outside. I spun hard in my throat. Something moved beyond the window. A shape, just at the edge of my vision, gone the second I turned my head. A whisper. My own name. I didn't remember grabbing my flashlight, but suddenly it was in my shaking hand. The beam cut through the dark, illuminating dust particles swirling in the air. I stepped closer to the window, pressing against the glass. Nothing but trees. Then I looked down. Footprints. Leading up to the cabin, but none leading away. The breath left my lungs. The radio crackled behind me. A burst of static, then a voice. Soft, wrong, familiar. Ethan, I turned. The radio wasn't plugged in, and somewhere outside, the trees began to move. I wake up gasping. The fire is out. The cold wraps around me like a second skin, and the silence is thick, too thick. No crickets, no rustling leaves, nothing. Just the sound of my own breathing. I sit up, my heart hammering, and reach for my flashlight. It flickers as I click it on, the weak beam cutting through the oppressive darkness. Something is wrong. My boots. They're not where I left them. They were right next to my sleeping bag. Now, they sit at the edge of the clearing, perfectly aligned, as if someone, or something, placed them there. I scan the trees. The flashlight's glow barely touches the trunks before fading into an abyss of black. I swallow hard and reach for my camera, hands trembling. I flip through the footage from earlier. Just the trees, the trail, my camp setup. And then I stop. The last video. I don't remember filming it. It shows me, asleep in my tent, the dim glow of the fire flickering against the nylon. The timestamp says it was recorded 30 minutes ago, but I was asleep, and then I see it. A figure, standing just outside my tent, its shape barely visible in the shadows, unmoving, watching. The footage cuts to black. I drop the camera. My pulses a roar in my ears. I scan the tree line again, my flashlight trembling in my grip. The forest is vast, empty, but I feel it. A presence, just beyond my reach, just beyond the light. Watching. I don't know how long I sit there, paralyzed. My mind claws for logic, but there is none. Someone was here. Someone was standing outside my tent, watching me sleep. And I never woke up. I shove my boots on and zip my backpack in one frantic motion. I need to get out. Now. I don't care if it's night, if the trail is dangerous in the dark. I am not staying here. The second I stand, I hear a whisper, not from my head, not from the trees. From behind me, it mimics my own voice. Don't look back. I freeze. The air is suddenly thick with something unseen, something wrong. My body screams to run, but my mind, my foolish, stubborn mind, forces me to turn my head, and I see it. A shape, tall, thin, wrong. It stands between the trees, barely illuminated by the dying glow of my flashlight. Its arms hang too long, its head tilts too far. It doesn't move like a person. It jerks forward, too fast, then stops, as if it's fighting against gravity itself. A gurgling sound escapes its throat, a wet, slithering thing that doesn't belong in this world. And then, it does something worse. It smiles, a sickening, stretched mimicry of human expression. My flashlight flickers and dies. The darkness swallows everything. I run, blind, stumbling, gasping. I don't care if I fall, if I break something, if I never stop running. I just know I have to get away. Branches whip against my face. My feet slam into the uneven earth. My lungs burn. My heartbeat is a war drum in my ears. And behind me, I hear it. Not running, not chasing, just moving, fast, too fast. I don't know how long I run before I realize something is wrong. The forest, it's not changing. The same trees, the same twisted roots. I've passed this place before. I'm running in circles. And then, through the suffocating terror, a single thought claws its way into my mind. It's not that I'm lost. It's that something won't let me leave. My breath stutters. I slow, gripping the nearest tree for balance, trying to silence the panic eating me alive. My hands shake. I force myself to turn, to look. Nothing. Just the trees, stretching into infinity. The thing is gone. Or hiding. I don't know what's worse. I swallow down the bile rising in my throat and look up. Through the shifting canopy, a sliver of pale moonlight cuts through the branches. The direction, that's my way out. If I keep moving toward the moon, I'll find my way back. I inhale deeply. My body is screaming. But I have no choice. I take one step forward, and my boot sinks into something soft. I look down and nearly collapse. It's a footprint, massive and fresh. My own. I have been walking in circles. For hours, a breath of wind moves through the trees, carrying with it something distant, faint, familiar. My owner. But I am not laughing. I am not alone. I run. Branches slash at my arms, my breath ragged. My legs burning as I push forward through the tangled underbrush. The forest is alive with whispers, a chorus of voices that murmur in my own tone, calling my name from places they shouldn't be. The trees are too close. The trail I was on is gone. Something is following me. Not chasing, following. I don't dare look back. I hear it, the sound of movement that isn't human. A staggered, stuttering motion, like something trying to remember how to walk. Footsteps that should belong to a living thing but don't. They come from everywhere and nowhere. I keep running. Ahead, the trees begin to thin. They're a sliver of dawnlight cutting through the mist. A way out. I push toward it, lungs searing, heart hammering, but the whispers grow louder. The air is thick, like I'm running through something unseen, something holding me back. My legs feel heavy, like I've been running for years. Then, the silence. I stop. The trees are gone. I'm standing in the middle of a road. The transition is instant, seamless, like stepping through a door that wasn't there. Behind me, the forest stands unnaturally still. The sunlight feels unreal, too bright, too sudden. A truck comes barreling down the road. The blare of the horn snaps me out of my daze, and I dive to the side, hitting the pavement hard. Tires screech. The vehicle skids to a halt. A man jumps out. A trucker, mid-40s, wild-eyed. Jesus Christ, are you okay? I can't answer. I'm staring at the forest. The shadows between the trees shift. Something is standing there, tall, hollow-eyed, watching. But as soon as I blink, it's gone. The driver grabs my arm, helps me to my feet. His hands are warm. Too warm. I'd forgotten what warmth felt like. You lost? He asks. You look like hell, son. I want to tell him everything. I want to scream, but the words feel useless. Like speaking them out loud will make it all real again. Nah. My throat is dry. I just need to get back to town. Later. The town is smaller than I remember. The people quieter. I sit across from Officer Galloway in the station. He listens without interrupting, his fingers steepled, his expression unreadable. I tell him about the forest, the entity, the loop, the ranger station, the whispers. When I finish, he exhales slowly, like he's heard it before. You made it out, he says. That's all that matters. Something in his tone chills me. I lean forward. That's it. No questions. Noke. He shakes his head. No one ever comes back the same. Some don't come back at all. I don't know what to say. The words feel useless again. I leave before sundown. I don't look at the forest as I drive away. The final message. The motel room is dim. My hands are shaking as I plug my phone into the charger. The screen lights up. Notifications flood in. I barely register them. My body is exhausted, my mind on the edge of collapse. Then a video, a file I don't remember recording. It's labeled I'm G2013. I hesitate, then press play. The screen is dark at first. Then, grainy footage of my campsite. Of me. I'm asleep in my tent. The dim glow of the dying fire flickering against the nylon fabric. The camera angle is wrong. Too high. As if someone was standing over me, filming. My breath catches. The video continues. Then, a shift in the darkness. A shape emerges from the trees, slowly, deliberately. Tall. Too tall. Gaunt and skeletal, its hollow eyes locked onto my sleeping form. Its head tilts in a way that isn't human. It moves closer. Then, it crouches. Right beside my tent. I watch frozen, as its long fingers hover inches from the thin fabric. It doesn't touch me. It just watches. For 7 minutes. Then, just before the video ends, it turns its head and looks directly into the camera. The screen goes black. I drop the phone. My pulse is deafening in my ears. I lift my head and catch my reflection in the modal mirror. For just a second, the face staring back isn't mine.